Welcome back to Mr. Legendary 999, where reality bends and nightmares begin. Tonight, we unearth a story not just whispered in the dark, but carved into the annals of forgotten history. A tale that straddles the boundary between the explainable and the unknown. This is the story of a man who may have died twice, whose very existence challenged the limits of science, faith, and the human soul. Prepare yourself for the chilling legend of the ghost of Jeremiah Black. It begins in the quiet, rolling hills of Sharpsburg, Maryland, in the year 1882. The Civil War's scars still marred the land, but life had returned to its steady rhythm. Among the laborers who toiled on the Kaiser farm was a young man named Thomas Delaney. 28 years old, he was a man of few words and fewer friends. He kept to himself, working from dawn until dusk, and never once spoke of where he had come from or what had brought him to this patch of earth. The widow Martha Kaiser, who owned the farm, paid him fairly and respected his privacy. But even she admitted something was off. He always looked over his shoulder, she later recalled, as if he expected someone or something to catch up with him. One stormy evening, Thomas did not return from his chores. The rain lashed the fields, and the river that bordered the property swelled with muddy, churning water. When dawn broke, they found his hat snagged on a fallen branch and his lifeless body downstream, tangled in the roots. The town mourned in its own quiet way. With no family to claim him, Martha arranged a modest burial at Mount Hope Cemetery. The grave was dug, the prayers were said, and Thomas Delaney was laid to rest. But the earth would not keep its secret for long. Only a week after the burial, strange rumors began to swirl. The cemetery caretaker, a man not prone to flights of fancy, abruptly quit his post. He refused to return, pale and trembling, muttering about noises in the night. "Something knocks," he whispered, from the inside of Delaney's grave. At first, the townsfolk laughed it off, but as the days passed, others began to avoid the cemetery after dusk. Some claimed to hear faint scratching or a muffled thumping, as if the earth itself was uneasy. 6 months slipped by, and the story might have faded into local legend, if not for what happened next. In the neighboring town of Shepherdstown, a stranger appeared. He called himself Jeremiah Black. He was a man of uncertain age. He claimed to be 32, but looked younger, his skin pale as if he'd not seen the sun in years. He had no identification, no home, and no memory of how he had arrived. But when questioned, he spoke with an unsettling certainty. "I was buried," he said. "I woke up under soil, but it wasn't my name." The townspeople dismissed him as a lunatic, another lost soul wandering the roads. But fate is a patient hunter. One afternoon, Martha Kaiser herself happened to visit Shepherdstown, and when she saw Jeremiah, her reaction was immediate and visceral. She screamed, pointing with a trembling hand. "That's Thomas Delaney!" she cried. "He worked for me. I buried him." Word spread like wildfire. The sheriff, Matthew Rowe, was a practical man, but he could not ignore Martha's insistence. He brought Jeremiah in for questioning. A physician was summoned to examine the stranger. There were no signs of injury, no scars or wounds, no evidence of trauma. His heartbeat was steady, his mind lucid. Yet when pressed, Jeremiah described details of the Kaiser property that only Thomas could have known. The rusted horseshoe hidden beneath the barn floorboards, the scent of honeysuckle that lingered in Martha's attic, the charred remains of a ledger tucked behind the fireplace. Every detail was accurate. And yet, the impossible remained. Thomas Delaney's body was still in the ground. The sheriff, torn between duty and disbelief, signed an order to exhume the grave. The townsfolk gathered in uneasy silence as the earth was turned. The coffin was lifted, its lid pried open. Inside lay the body of Thomas Delaney, unmistakable and unchanged. But one horrifying detail froze the blood of all who saw it. The inside of the coffin lid was scored with deep, desperate scratches. The corpse's fingers were broken and bloody, nails torn away. The physician, voice barely above a whisper, confirmed what everyone feared. He was alive when he was buried. Martha fainted. The crowd recoiled in terror. But Jeremiah stood motionless, his eyes fixed on the ruined hands. "That's not me," he said quietly. "I don't know who that is, but I was in that box." The town was gripped by fear and confusion. The sheriff, unable to reconcile the facts, ordered Jeremiah committed to the local asylum for observation. There, the story grew stranger still. During his stay, Jeremiah began speaking fluent German in his sleep, though no one in Sharpsburg or Shepherdstown had ever heard him utter a word in any language but English. He whispered names, unfamiliar at first, until a visiting historian from the University of Baltimore recognized them as residents of a small village in Prussia, people who had perished in a fire in 1871. The historian pressed further and soon uncovered a faded photograph of a Prussian soldier named Elias Brecht, who had died during the Franco-Prussian War. The resemblance to Jeremiah was uncanny, but Elias had been dead for over a decade. How could this be? Word of the strange case reached Father Anselm, the local priest. He visited Jeremiah seeking answers. The two spoke for hours behind closed doors. When the priest emerged, his face was ashen, his hands shaking. "He knew things from my past," Father Anselm confessed. "My sins, my dreams as a boy. He is not one man, he is many." Rumors spread like wildfire. Some whispered that Jeremiah was a soul collector, a vessel for spirits unfinished with life. Others believed he was cursed or chosen by forces beyond human comprehension. The grave that whispered, they said, was a warning from one of those lost souls, an attempt to reclaim the body that had been stolen from him. Years passed, but the legend did not die. In the dusty archives of the asylum, a diary was discovered, written in Jeremiah's own hand. The entries were haunting. "I dream of fire and drowning. Each night, I die again. They speak in my head. They are angry I am here. Martha still watches me from the barn. I see her lips move, but no sound. I think I was buried twice. Once as Thomas. Once before that. How many times can a soul return?" The final chapter of Jeremiah's story is the most mysterious of all. In 1891, he vanished from his locked room at the asylum. There was no broken window, no disturbed door, no footprints in the dust. He was simply gone. But the legend did not end there. Across the country, in the wild frontier town of Cody, Wyoming, a drifter was arrested for trespassing. He gave his name as Daniel Black. He looked 30, spoke with a Prussian accent, and claimed to have come from Maryland. When questioned by the sheriff, he smiled and said, "I was once buried, but I got better." The sheriff, bewildered, let him go. Days later, a train derailed in Montana, killing all aboard, except for one body that was never recovered. Witnesses swore they saw a man walk from the wreckage, dust himself off, and smile before vanishing into the wilderness. And so the story endures. Some say Jeremiah still walks among us, wearing a different face, speaking a different name, living a life borrowed from the souls of the restless dead. Each time he appears, tragedy and confusion follow, as if the universe itself cannot decide whether he belongs to the living or the dead. What are we to make of this tale? Was Thomas Delaney a victim of premature burial? His desperate struggle mistaken for a supernatural return? Was Jeremiah Black a lost soul, haunted by memories that were not his own? Or was he something stranger, a vessel for the wandering spirits of the past, condemned to live and die and live again over and over, until the debt of unfinished lives is repaid? Science offers little comfort. The records are clear. The man known as Thomas Delaney was buried alive, his final moments spent clawing at the coffin lid in a futile attempt to escape. But the man who called himself Jeremiah Black knew things he could not have known, spoke languages he had never learned, and vanished without a trace. Faith, too, is tested. Father Anselm, a man of God, could not explain what he had witnessed. The townspeople, once skeptical, became wary of strangers, watching for the telltale signs of a borrowed soul. In the end, perhaps the truth is lost to time, buried beneath layers of fear and disbelief. The diary remains, its pages yellowed and brittle, a testament to a life, or many lives, spent searching for answers. I dream of fire and drowning. Each night, I die again. They speak in my head. They are angry I am here. How many times can a soul return? The grave at Mount Hope Cemetery is unmarked now, its secret swallowed by the earth. But on stormy nights, some say you can still hear the faint sound of scratching, as if someone, or something, is trying to claw its way back into the world of the living. And if you find yourself alone in a strange town, and you meet a man who seems to know too much, who looks at you with eyes that have seen too many lifetimes, remember the story of Jeremiah Black. Remember the grave that whispered, the body in the box, and the soul that would not rest. Some stories are meant to be repeated. Some lives are meant to be lived more than once. And some nightmares never end. If you believe that some tales are too strange to be fiction, too chilling to be forgotten, then you know what to do. Like this video if you believe some stories are meant to be repeated. Subscribe to Mr. Legendary 999 for more terrifying tales rooted in forgotten history. And if you made it to the end, comment, "He's not done." But beware, once he reads your name, he might borrow your face next.